Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Equilibrium Collective. I am Kerry Ann and I'm joined this evening with my co-host Sarah. Hi Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Fat on Easter eggs.
Living a best Easter egg life
All
is what
right.
we're doing.
Naps and everything, like proper cat naps, curled up like this. Mustache
Yeah,
chocolate.
just getting there and just a little bit. Yeah, it's the restraint that I lacked. The restraint was lacking.
Yeah. YOLO.
Yeah. So, but thank you everyone who's joined us. Good evening, Simon. It's great to see you in the chat. Hello, it's Jess. Thank you so much for joining us. This evening, we're going to be talking about the Foxy sisters. Now, we have done quite a lot of extensive research on this subject over the last couple of weeks. And we have found that there are so many stories, so much mixed information. There's so much to get through, and we aren't able to cover all of it. So we are literally skimming across, which isn't giving it justice, but we aren't experts in this area. We just want to talk about something that we found really interesting, and something that we have followed, even if it's loosely or completely throughout our lives. So it's nice to learn something new about something we thought we knew so well as well. So so Fox's sisters is quite a fascinating case.
There's so many twists and turns in this story. I mean, honestly, mind blown.
Definitely. The first thing, though, I found quite interesting is that for a long time I felt, or I believed, that Fox's sisters founded spiritualism, and this isn't, depending on how you view what spiritualism is, whether you are looking at it as the entity that it become, or the sum of the parts, what it contained. This happened years before the Foxy sisters come about. So, you have the Greeks that would consult the oracles. You had obviously the Romans who would, look to their gods. And that's just a very brief overview. But the Foxy sisters weren't the first to believe to have communicated or had said to have communicated with spirits. This is something that went on previous, even academics, in terms of people that wrote about it. So you have French philosophers, Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am. He believed about the duality of the body and the soul, that the body was a motor and the soul was organic, and that when the motor or the mechanics broke down, the soul would then transcend or continue, it wouldn't end. So this is a kind of theory that goes throughout the years. When you think of Albert Einstein, who talks about energy never ending and just reliving or regoing. So this is something that's been spoken about. But when you talk about spiritualism, there are two components. So you have the Anton or Franz Anton Mesmer. So this guy was the one that coined animal magnetism, the belief that we have a magnetic fluid in our body, and that when he puts you in a mesmerized state, this is where mesmerism comes from, that he's able to align this magnetic field by using his hands and touch and so forth. And he believed that this imbalance that was created by this magnetic field or magnetic fluid would cause physical and mental alignment. So he believed that by aligning them, he was able to remove or, heal physical and mental ailments. So you had that. And then you had Emanuel Swedenborg, who believed in the three heavens, the three hells, and purgatory, and that, which was similar to Earth, purgatory. And he believed that he was able to communicate with spirits on every plane. So spiritualism was these two thoughts kind of smushed together. The belief that you could go into an altered state, mesmerism, enabled to be able to communicate with the spirits on different planes. So that's kind of, spiritualism has been going on for a long time under different names, but the spiritualist movement really come about with Andrew Jackson Davis, and he was the one that was fundamental with the Foxy sisters. So that's me talking about that aspect of things. What do you think of that so far? What's your belief in this?
It's really difficult because although obviously there's been spirituality of some amount throughout the whole of time, it wasn't until fairly recently people really started to delve in and talk about it and explore what it actually meant.
Well, yeah, and there was lots of barriers in our way as well. When you think about the Witchcraft Act, if you was seen to do trance mediumship, then you was condemned to witch. Now, please bear this in mind.
Just collecting herbs, you could be burnt at the stake.
You know what? Funny thing, my nan traced back her ancestry. So my nan's Celtic, and I'm very proud of my Celtic roots. And she traced back. So in Wales, in Scotland, in those areas, witchcraft and stuff, it seemed like the Celts were pushed out when kind of, the Vikings and whoever come along. I'm not great with it. So a lot of the natural ways of working was pushed out. When you think about St. Patrick's, when they're pushing out the snakes, that's meant to be paganism and stuff. So anyway, I digress. She traced back her ancestry, and it said that one of her ancestors was a witch for keeping a dirty toilet. So you literally, honestly, yeah, she was honestly for keeping a dirty toilet. So anything, you could be a witch, and it was illegal. Trance mediumship was illegal as well. So and this is only within our lifetime. I think we worked out 70 years ago or something like that, that they abolished this act, and people, the last woman. Yeah, within our lifetime.
I think it was.
It's ridiculous. So when you look at that, but right, so with the Fox's sisters, the story of the Fox's sisters was to start there, I have to talk about the house that they lived in, where it started. So there's a backstory, but at the same time, this is alleged because the other stories come along and debunk this story, but it's important that I tell it. So but the story started with the Bells family. Now, this Bell family lived in this one-bedroom cottage, and they had a maid, and the maid was there, lived there. And the time this maid lived there, a peddler turned up selling his wares. They decided that they were going to help the peddler out by giving him board, and they brought some of his items. And in this time, the maid was told that she was no longer needed. There was no bad blood. It wasn't anything negative. It was the fact that there was no work for her there. So off she went, and she went home. And she arranged before she went home that she was going to buy a knife from this peddler. She arranged with the peddler to be able to drop this knife off at her dad's house. So gave him directions. The time come for the peddler, he just didn't turn up. The knife didn't turn up, and neither did he. After a while, the Bells invited her back home to work again. And when they arrived, she noticed that the room that he was occupying was empty, but all of his wares were there. So she just assumed that they were quite a wealthy family. She just assumed that they'd brought his wares and he'd gone on his way. But this time when she went back there was a lot of knocking and rapping and noises and stands that seemed like people were walking up and down the stair, and all this stuff was going on to the point that she just didn't want to be at the home when the Bells weren't there anymore. That she would ask family members to come and stay with her so she wasn't on her own. And then there was also a time that she recalled that she went into the cellar. And when she went into the cellar, there was fresh overturned mud, and she'd fallen over and hurt herself. So she made the point to say to Mr. Bell, what's this for? And he said, oh, no, it's just spare mud that we'd use to fill in holes from where rats had burrowed. So she just left it as that, and that was it. The family left, and when the family left, they'd moved on. She then was no longer a maid there. It then went into the hands of another family. The fact they weren't there for very long because of the rapping noises, and it all come to a head where one of the family members went into the kitchen of the home, and they saw a man in a black coat, and she screamed, he disappeared, and that was them. They were done. They were like, yeah, I'm out. That's enough for me. Thank you very much. So they left, and then cue in the Fox's sisters. Now I don't know whether this is a true story. I don't know if that is the case, whether the Fox's sisters or the family knew previously of the haunting. They weren't staying there for very long. It was a temporary home. The dad, John Bell, and the mum, Margaret Bell, they had literally occupied the cottage whilst they built a farmhouse on some land that John had brought. So they were just staying there for a small amount of time. It wasn't something long-term for them. So whether they knew any of this, I don't know. And then it said that as soon as the Bell family turned up, the Fox's family turned up, occurrences started straight away for them. When they actually, the mum and the dad are devoted Christian, like God-fearing, like family. They wanted to disbelieve. They did, the dad thought the children and the wife was being irrational. The mum didn't want to believe that there was a ghost there, but the daughters were, there was noises walking up and down the cellar. There was banging, rapping, tapping. And this one night they'd had enough, and the dad was like, right, I'm going to find out what is going on, like what is happening in my home. So he was going about the house. He took one of the children with him, Margaret and Kate. Margaret and Catherine. So Maggie and Kate is what they were referred to. One at this time was 11 and one was 14, I want to say, at the time this happened. They're banging, tapping, rapping. And the one that was with the dad had said to him, have you noticed that every time you knock, someone knocks back? So what she did, she was like, right, listen up, ghosts, hear me. I'm going to cut 3 times, copy me what I do. And she did. And they had the tapping back. Now, at this point, the mum and the other daughter come in. The dad, they're now talking, communicating with the ghost with tapping. Tap once for yes, 2 for no. And they develop this kind of communication. Now, we use this method now, so shout out to the Fox's sisters for innovating the way for us. But yeah, so they then contacted or went round to the neighbours and was like, look, we think we have a ghost, like, can you check this out for me? We want to show you. And in this time, the neighbours come over, and William, his name was, he then communicated with the ghost, and this is where they took it further. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for don't know, 5 for needing further assistance. And they actually started using like spirit board communication and stuff like that, or alphabet ways of communicating through that. By doing that, they established this ghost that they were communicating with was a peddler. This peddler said that he had been killed for the sum of $500 5 years prior, and that he'd been buried under the cellar. Now, this is in front of all the neighbours. The neighbours then went and traced the owners of the place 5 years prior, as well as having one of the neighbours there happened to be this maid as well. Fun fact. So she's now telling everyone this story, what happened about the overturned mud and stuff like that. And they end up tracing this John Bell. His name's not John Bell. His name's Mr. Bell. It might be John Bell, though. I don't know. But Mr. Bell, they traced him, accused him of murder. He was then shunned out of his community. And off the basis of these girls saying that they communicated with this ghost, this is how much they believed them. The clergy was like, this is not okay. This is not an okay thing. We're worried for their souls. They need to leave. And that's what happened. They left. One went with their brother David, and one went with their sister Leah. That's what one account says. Another account says that a lawyer come to the house and done a full investigation. And off the back of this investigation, he wrote an article about the mystical goings on, the mesmerizing things or mysterious things going on in this home. This article had been reached by Leah, who had read it and found out what had gone on with the sisters, and then called for the sisters to move with them. So there's a bit of I don't know what's going on there, but that's basically what they say. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think about that? I feel like I've just been talking at you.
I don't know, it's like an episode of EastEnders, isn't it?
I wish it was. I would. Yes, I would.
So dramatic. I mean, can you imagine being one of the neighbours, absolutely terrified about what's going on with the neighbours next door?
Yeah.
But also being those girls, like, they're suddenly getting all this attention and they're loving it, but they're not understanding what this is going to lead to.
No.
Like,
So
knowing the story, it's like, oh my god, oh my god.
I know the plot thickens, but up to this point, now there's so many different points. Now I have to say, spoiler alert, one of the sisters comes out and gives a detailed explanation of how they faked this, right? So if that is the case, we already have a whole neighborhood community, because at this point these are communities in Upper New York. We have a whole community that is aware of a murder, who's then gone created a lynch mob for this poor like man that's just sitting there minding his business, and now all of a sudden he's a murderer on a basis of these 11-year-old and 14-year-old children. So it gets worse though for these girls, depending on your perspective. Now, I will be honest with you, I have spiritualist roots in my belief. I am not a spiritualist now, but it started off there. So a lot of these stories are stories that I already knew, but I didn't know the full story of them. So the same with Helen Duncan. Like, I didn't know the full story about her either until I started researching. So the moral of this story is go and do your own research. Don't, we have unconscious bias, and that comes in many different forms, and it is that bias that pushes us to seek information that validates an already ingrained belief. So it's important to try and step out of that bias sometimes and try and see something, and I learned a lot by doing that, I'm not gonna lie. Right, that is correct. They called him Mr. Splitfoot because they believed he was the devil. They believed him demonic. So they named him Mr. Splitfoot. And it was through communication that they realized that his name was Charles D. Charles D. Sound like I'm calling him out now, isn't I?
Spirit box session. Bring it on. Let's do this.
Tap once for yes, 2 for no. Are you there, spirits? Can you hear me?
Oh, what would you do if you actually got some knocks right now?
Well, do you know what? It probably wouldn't faze me too much because I live in flats. So it'd probably be my downstairs neighbours going, oh. Right, so I can't find his actual name. I did write it down. His name's Charles D. something. Anyway, they managed to find this out through the tapping and going through the alphabet. But before that, they did know him as Splitfoot, and that is because they believed that he was the devil. They thought it was the demonic, so that's why they named him that. And yes, David, I did mention David before. So David was the older brother, and one of the sisters allegedly went and stayed with him while the other one stayed with the older sister. But we also heard that she called for them after reading an article that was written by a lawyer that came and investigated the occurrences that were going on inside the home. So, well, okay, so we have this that's happened. So now Leah has the children. Leah has them, and this is where it turns into a bit of a show, a bit of a nightmare, because first thing she does is she contacts the local newspaper, and says, look what my sisters can do, and they perform for them, and they come in as skeptics, and they make communication, and they come away and they published it, and a friend of Leah, her last name is not Fox. She was widowed. She had a child already. And it's important to know that she was in poverty at this point. And she was literally trying to make ends meet with, thank you at Charles D. Rosner. Thank you very much. She was making money at this point by doing music lessons. So she calls upon the children. They then do this seance or communication. And then what happens is they get in touch with Amy and Isaac Post. Now, they are Quakers, but they're a branch of the Quakers. And they believe that you didn't have to go to church to worship God, that you can communicate with God at any point, anywhere, whenever you wanted to. They believed in women in power as well. So the fact that a lot of these mediums were women was really, monumental for them. They followed political campaigns, the anti-slavery campaign. They also, they were the beginnings of the suffragettes as well. And what you'd find is these trance mediums. Now, this was at a time where women weren't allowed to communicate with men, without men. They could, without them present or having their chaperone with them to be able to communicate, unless you was a trance medium. If you was a trance medium, then you could. So what was happening was these women were able to use their voice to actually be heard to an audience that was actually captivated by them. So they're able to put across their political agenda in a way that
exploiting the rules, really, to get their word across.
Well, me personally, I feel like these women were exploited, these young girls in particular.
Yeah, of course.
But I do feel like women exploited this movement to be able to, you know, get their you know, thing across. So these Quakers were skeptics. They're very kind of like, you know, intellectual people, and they wanted to go and see what it was about. And they go to one of these sit-ins, and in this sit-in they make communication. Now, it's important to know that these young girls in communication, it would be, they would ask questions and they would get rappings and tappings in return. And it wasn't until this sit-in with the posts that they then realized that Leah was a medium, was able to communicate with spirit, and she actually communicated with the posts, one of their dead children. Now, when you look at the belief in spiritualism, it's important to really look at the time that this happened. You had a lot of mortality in children. Their current religion meant that children that died before they were baptized was an abomination. You had a lot of people that were questioning their faith, didn't want to believe that everything was predetermined, that you only had one life and that was it. So this area, Rochester, which is where they moved to with Leah, was a time of reformed religion. They were looking for new religions.
Rochester in the US.
Yes, Rochester in the US, yeah. No. They were looking for new religion, and that's what they found. They found this new religion. So yeah, so they ended up doing a event. They booked out a hall. They invited 400 people to attend. And I mean, a little bit degrading. They did take the girls into a private room with Mrs. Post and 3 skeptics, and they derobed the women to check for any contraptions that they could use to make noises. And they found that they didn't have any. And then they went on to do their show, and it went without a hitch. That's it. Yeah.
And they made a killing.
Well, at that point they did, because they were doing, they were then invited by the previous mentioned Davis that I'd already spoken about. He was the one that kind of coined it all together. And they went to New York and they did shows in a local in a parlor that they booked in New York.
Quite a few seances in hotels and stuff, didn't they?
They did. What they did was they charged $1 per person. They'd done 3 seances a day, and there would be up to 30 people that attend, which at that time, that's a lot of money. And in between, they were doing private sittings as well. So they were charging for private sittings. And it wasn't just like, it was, I mean, Queen Victoria and her husband converted to spiritualism. President Lincoln and his wife converted to spiritualism. You know, there's the leader of the suffragettes was a spiritualist. There was lawyers, there were doctors, there were, you know, these weren't just people that were that seemed to be uneducated and just following a whim. These were people that, you know, so yes, so they all went along, and that's kind of what happened. That's where they were at. That's what they did. Now, here comes the controversy, because when you look at these 2 women that were doing this with Leah, they went on to do a tour around east of America, and Leah stayed at home where she would do sit-ins. And it kind of all come to a head when one of them got married. But it's important to point out at this point is that they said that they did this because they felt like they had to. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to stop it a long time ago. And at this point, it's important to remember that this is a prank. This was a prank. that has then established, I think, within a few years, like millions of followers. It's astounding, really, when you think that if you could really kind of bring it down to a point of creation, that
But
could have been
saying
it.
that, to have that many followers, there must have been something in it that resonated with all those people.
Could it just have been the fact that they loved if you think of one thing we've got in common, no matter what race, no matter what belief you've got, the one thing we've got in common is death.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, you still grieve, you still love, you still,
Absolutely.
and these, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this as a disbeliever. I believe in mediumship, I believe in it, I believe in manifestation of spirit, I believe in all of that. But when you remove yourself at how fast it spread and to how many people it spread and the magnitude of what this was, it's important to remember this is a time where civil war was, you know, more people died in the Civil War than in World War One and World War Two put together. And this is at the time that spiritualism come about. So this is what you need. And infant death was horrific. 1 in 2 babies passed away in early infancy. So death or mortality. And Victorians had a morbid obsession with death. You know, this is when we had the photo, dead photo, what they call death photos, and you know, so they had a morbid obsession with mortality. And maybe it was because they needed to know, because it was so common. They wanted to know if, you know, some of it's really touching. Some of the, you know, information that I read and some of the things that I see, like these were mums that wanted to make sure that their children was being taught to read. One of them asked, is someone teaching them to read? This is quite heartfelt, you know? So this is where it's coming from. That's where this want to believe is coming from, really. But the downfall of these women was their own self-destruction, really. So
yeah, it did get kind of tricky towards the end, didn't it?
it did. So going through, I've done a massive timeline. So what happened was Maggie met someone. He was 13 years her senior. His name was Elijah Kent Kane. He was an explorer and he attended one of her sessions, or their sessions. He was a skeptic. He didn't believe in it. And he followed her. I want to say he was a low-key stalker. I'm not going to lie. That definitely has a stalky feeling. But one of the things that made me feel a bit uncomfortable, and it is, I'm reminded of the time when I read this, but he continuously wished to remove Maggie from the spiritual world and properly educate her. Like, are you okay, hon? You okay, hon? Yeah. No, it's a no from me. Thank you.
Yeah,
generous offer.
No.
But he was persistent. Again, low-key stalker. And she ended up actually marrying him, and he was very successful, quite wealthy.
Anything for a quiet life.
Oh, do you know what? All right, fine.
Whatever.
Oh, God.
But separate bedrooms.
Yeah, and I get to keep the house. That's my terms. But she actually denounced spiritualism for him. She stayed with him, but sadly he passed away 5 years later. She was baptized as a Roman Catholic, and for him, basically, in his memory. But the problem was the family didn't acknowledge the wedding and or the marriage, and didn't recognize her as a widow, so she had no access to his estate. She become in the end turned to alcoholism, and she ended up living in quite a lot of poverty. And then Leah in 1888, which I'm aware that's the first time I've ever said a date in this whole show, and I've got a whole timeline. I don't know why I've left all the dates out. I don't know. It's like a weird puzzle. Some bits you got to figure out yourself, guys. Just put it in. But yeah, Leah in 1888 ceased offering services for money, and when she married her third husband, he was a wealthy businessman, but he was also a well-respected spiritualist as well. His name was Daniel Uphill, and then Kate continued to develop her skills, and they said that she was able to develop her skills where she was able to speak one message and write a second at the same time.
That's skills.
I can't even open a can of drink and talk at the same time.
I was about to say.
I can't do that. I can't talk and watch TV at the same time. That is a woman of her era.
Definitely.
Doing it all myself. So she then travelled to England, and in 1872, and she met a spiritualist and lawyer and married, and she was widowed 10 years later. But this was all around the time. So spiritualism had a massive peak, kind of went down, and then after the Civil War and all this death that occurred, it really picked up again, and she was pressured to put on a lot of performances, and it was too much, and she too ended up turning to alcoholism. What happened was Leah, who's the oldest sister, ended up accusing Kate to say that she was unfit to take care of her children, and it actually resulted in them being removed from her care. This really strained it. Strange. No, I'm saying strained.
Oh my God.
Video
relationship.
Actual footage of minds being blown. Anyway, they weren't friends no more. So what?
Hard work.
Sorry. So what ends up happening is Maggie then goes to the New York Herald, and she is quoted to say, spiritualism is a curse. No matter what form spiritualism presents itself, it is that what will be and what always is a curse and a trap for all who engage with it. So this leads to, now obviously you have really strange relationships. They talk about abuse. The younger two was like mentally and emotionally abused by the older one, pressured when they wanted to leave. She would say, if you did, I will tell them that you lied to me, like you lied to our mum. Like all this was being done, and that's why they felt like they had to stay in. Bearing in mind at this point, they have been presented as the founders of spiritualism as well. So this whole movement, it's like I'm not going to use that example, but it's like basically someone saying a prophet doesn't exist. You know, this is the equivalent to what it would do with the spiritual movement. However, in October 1888, Maggie went and to the New York Academy of Music and exposed the sisters. Now we have got a quote. I don't know if Sarah's got it ready.
No, I thought you was doing it.
Oh no, I sent it to you.
Oh.
I sent you. Wow.
Okay, scratch that.
It's okay. So the quote, I don't know, have you got the timings on there?
No. Sorry.
I'll distract you over here. So we will go over to that. So what I want to talk about as well is we'll go back over to that, is that there is two really interesting characters that come up in this topic, and they were brought together because of maybe not directly but indirectly, the Fox's sisters. Now the first one is Harry Houdini, and the second one is Arthur Duncan Coyle. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. And you got Arthur, who is the author of Sherlock Holmes, and everyone knows who Harry Houdini is. He is a magician. Now, Arthur is a renowned spiritualist. He is also known for establishing the Stanford College. Arthur Conan Doyle. High five. Thank you. He established the Stanford College of Physical Mediumship. Now, we in the medium world refer to this place as Hogwarts because this is where people from all over the world go to develop their physical mediumship skills. And it is fantastic there, absolutely beautiful, beautiful grounds, and they do lectures and all sorts there. So he was the one who established this. He was also, fun fact, the guy that went and investigated the fairies in Cotswold. Is it Cotswold fairies? And he was the one that actually said that they existed. We all know that that's fake. We will watch the film, but he actually went and investigated that and the photo evidence and said that they existed. So that gives you a bit of an idea about him and his mindset. He also wrote Sherlock Holmes. I'm not sure if I said that. And then you've got Harry Houdini, who started life, I don't know if everyone know this, started his life as a medium, his career as a medium. Him and his wife would travel, and he says he was a fake. He would con people. What happened was his mother passed away, and he really wanted to believe that mediums existed. So he would go and he would travel and he would try and find a medium that could communicate with his mum that had passed away. So there was a code word that they would use, and no matter what happened, wherever he went, the mediums that he met never ever said this code word, which was what his mum said that she would say if ever she was able to communicate with him. And what ended up happening was Arthur Conan Doyle. Oh yeah, that's right. It's Arthur Finlay. I messed up, guys. Thank you, Ghost Education 101. You are exactly what it says on the tin. You are. Thank you. Thank you. I retract. I still stand by everything I said about the Stanford College, but I retract the fact that it was Arthur Conan Doyle. That's a fib. It's not true. I made it up, and that is how rumors start. It was, in fact, Arthur Finlay, and that is terrible. My teacher would go ballistic if she knew I said that. So can we just everyone keep it a secret? It's between me and you, no one else. Yes. So Doyle then come in contact with Houdini and said, you know, I want to make you believe, I want you to experience this, and I can put you in touch with my hold on one second, Sarah. Put you in touch with your mum who'd passed away, and it was Arthur's wife that done a sit-in, done automatic writing, and was able to write a 15-page letter from Harry Houdini's mum to Harry. And Harry at the time didn't really say anything about it. He took it in. He was like, okay, thank you. But what struck him as being really peculiar was that it didn't mention the mum's date, birthday, which was on that day. And it didn't mention that, and it was in English, sorry, and his mum didn't speak English. He did bring it up to Arthur at a later date, and Arthur said to Harry, in the spirit realm, birthdays are irrelevant, and they don't speak in the tongue of the past loved one, they speak in the tongue of the medium. So he completely dismissed the fact that Harry had said, I really don't believe this was my mum because, you know, it's her birthday on that day, and you know, and obviously she doesn't speak English, and it's fluent English, and he said, no, that's not true. They speak in the language that the medium speaks in. Thank you, Ghost Education. Yeah, my teacher did. My teacher does, and that's why she'd absolutely go Garrity at me if she. It's at the Arthur's. I don't want to be disrespectful and say tomato because I know it's not. But I do apologise. I apologise. Apologise to them. Apologise. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for pointing it out, though. So now I've dug myself in a big hole of false information, fake news. Sarah has so this is what they released. This is what they released when they went in front of 400 people and said what had happened when they when they renounced it.
3 years of
Oh, that was weird.
Yeah.
silence, through intimidation, scorn, and bitter adversity, concealing as best I might the consciousness of my guilt. Now, thanks to God and my awakened conscience, I am at last able to reveal the fatal truth, the exact truth of this hideous fraud, which has withered so many hearts and blended so many hopeful lives. I am here tonight as one of the founders of Spiritualism, to denounce it as an absolute falsehood from beginning to end, as the flimsiest of superstitions, the most wicked blasphemy known to the world. Maggie claimed that the whole act started as a way to scare their mother, who was superstitious, and proceeded to demonstrate how they produced the wrappings that enthralled so many people. She removed her right shoe and placed her foot on a short wooden stool. The room grew silent as the crowd paid close attention. Moments later, the sound of wrappings could be heard. 3 physicians who observed her during the demonstration came on stage to confirm that the sound had indeed been produced by the first joint of her big toe.
So she did go on to say how they created this. Now, the first thing they did when this first ever started was they said that they tied apples to string and they would move the apples so it would make knocking noises so it sounded like footsteps up and down the cellar. That they would click their toes the way that we would click fingers. They managed to do it in a way where it is said that if you learn to do this from a young age and carry on manipulating this certain muscle in your foot and your leg, you can actually click your toes like you would your fingers, and this is what she showed them that she could do as well. And this is what she said, this is what happened, it's not true. And she actually went ahead and done a expose tour where she would want to kind of fill seats to prove that this isn't to prove that it never happened. She did. A lot of the spiritualists went up in arms. They believed that due to mental health issues, alcoholism, and the lack of money, poverty, that she made it up, that she isn't, she's lying about lying, and that what actually is the case is that she needed the $1,500 that they were paying her for this expose, and that is the motive behind doing it and bringing this to the forefront. And it didn't go very far after that. She tried to make money from it, she couldn't, and then a year later she come forward and she said, actually guys, only joking, it is really true. My spirit guide told me to tell you that, but yeah, I can.
If you lied once, they're not going to believe you again, are they?
Honestly. So yeah, and then that it's very sad. Leah, lived her life. The sisters were estranged. One passed away from alcoholism, from one night of drinking, and I think a few months after that, the other sister passed away, and that was it. They never really spoke either. They never made up, and it's sad. So sad. Like, if you take away the significance of the story in terms of spiritualism and look at them as individuals, you have 2 young girls who from a young age, whether they were lying or not, pointed a finger at this murderer, which I will say that 11 years after the sisters died, children were playing in the ruins of the grounds of where the cottage was, and they actually did find bone fragments that was taken and analysed and said yes, it did belong to a skeleton, but when they further looked into it, it was a mixture of human bones and chicken bones, and there was they did say that it could have been that the human bones were put there from a nearby graveyard, or put into the ruins and stuff. So they did find bones there, but again, you've got this controversy about where it come from. It was at this point ruins, opened ground. Now, from my understanding, the ruins are preserved. They're rubble, it's like the outlining of the building, and you can go investigations. You can do an investigation there. So I feel like that's true. From being really careful now after my Arthur problem. We're going to call that Arthurgate.
Arthur True.
Honestly, I'm gonna whip myself after this. I'm gonna be like 30 lashes. I can't believe I did that. God, it's lucky it weren't public, eh? It's lucky I did that, between us. But yeah. So when you take away from that, and then also, I mean, no matter who you are, when someone asks what their biggest fear is, usually is death or something linked to death, or so when you look at that and then couple it with a time where death was literally on their doorstep, in their home,
every single day.
yeah, and in the most horrific ways as well. This is like the illnesses were illnesses and the deaths were like deaths,
Brutal,
so
yeah.
you have to ask yourself, like, what the components of everything put together. If that wasn't the case, I mean, Simon brought this point up earlier and said it, if it wasn't for the circumstances and the environment in which they were, you put entertainment purposes only. But is the significance, if that was in a different era, in a different time, would it had such significance? Don't know.
But the fact that it got people talking about it has probably made it more acceptable today.
Oh, well, it's not illegal anymore, which is great. They were able to use it as a platform for women to speak about women's rights and equality and access to free, access to for all, for everyone,
Yeah.
It put people in a position of power that weren't in power. It reformed the way people looked at religion and how they could worship their god or gods, or it kind of really
more
did.
accessible, I think, as well.
Yeah, it did, and they did have a talking table. I just reminded myself. Now, this table was actually so clever. I mean, it's not, I've got to admire the artistry behind it, that's all. Right? But they had this table that had a metal rod inside. So it had like a false top, a metal rod inside, and they'd move this rod and it'll knock on the table. And I thought, it's so simple.
So clever.
Yeah.
Genius.
Right. That's what I was thinking. It's like, yeah. But that they were said to use things like this. Now, I know I've kind of given it a bit of a bad go. I do believe in mediumship. I believe in trance mediumship. I believe in transfiguration. I believe in physical mediumship, and I believe in communication of spirit. I am a believer. I am also impartial. I have to be, because I love learning about new things. So I also take the opposing sides and kind of see it from all perspectives. But coming away from so we couldn't talk about Fox's Sisters without talking about spiritualism and the way that they would manifest spirit. So, I mean, we've got 10 minutes before we go. I want to talk a little bit about how we still use the Victorian methods of communication, and we still use them now, don't we?
Well, you've got the table tipping.
Yes, we've got
talking board.
Scry. Yeah, scrying. Yeah, we've got divination, dowsing rods.
Pendulums and dowsing rods, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, and you had, Simon mentioned the booth, the spirit booth. I don't know if Simon's still there. Simon, if you hear me. I think so. I think that's what it was. Because I didn't actually look into that too much. But we had, and then when you think of the Winchester mansion, when she bought the house that was full of rooms, and this is all a Victorian era, and that was around the Civil War as well. I'm pretty sure, because the Winchester gun was what they used during the Civil War, and she truly believed that all these spirits would come and come and find her, like avenge him. Scrying books. Philip Watts is the one that's in the comment that he said about hearing about the Fox's Sisters. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to see you there. And scrying, yeah. I mean, Sarah's got a business called Fables, and she does do divination tools, dowsing rods, pendulums, all them kind of stuff. A cheeky little plug, which we have. I've done no banners this evening. There you go. And it's gone, and it's back. Oh, there we go. Fables. So let's see it. Check out Fables, because they do also. Sarah does all kind of like spiritual goodies, but it includes divination and stuff like that.
And wellness as well. And I've got to say,
there is.
The website is under construction because I'm making a whole new website. But you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all that great stuff.
And if you've got any questions about divination and how to communicate in that way, then feel free to get in contact with Sarah. But I will say, I mean, in the next couple, obviously, we've got a little bit more free movement and we're getting closer and closer to having more, which is fantastic. But obviously, being careful and minding government guidelines still, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get out for the first time in a long time with a piece of kit.
Can get together. For the first
well, hopefully, definitely. That's we've got Kent and Essex, and we are still looking for members, by the way. So if you are in Kent and Essex and you're interested in having joining, then please contact us. But I will be doing something in the next couple of weeks, and I would love to know what kind of methods you'd like to use or like to see me use, whether it be divination, dowsing rods, whether you'd like us to use our now traditional types of equipment, spirit box, K2. Please get in touch and let us know, because I'll be doing that as a live on the Facebook page, so you can get in touch and have a listen. Because I always find with lives, it's sometimes easier when using equipment like spirit boxes for people listening in on the live, hearing what's being said, than someone that's right there, right then.
And also taking screenshots as the live is going on. Because I know with some of the ones that I've watched, Paranormal Shadows Investigation, another plug.
Our sister group.
You wouldn't see it during the video, but when you scroll back on your screenshots, there'll be like a figure, or there'll be an orb.
Yeah. Yes, that'd be fantastic
as well.
Yeah, we are hoping to get into an undisclosed location. I'm waiting to hear back for that. So let me know what kind of investigation methods you want us to use and how you want me to do it, and let me know, and I'll be happy to do that. And also we've got some, we're talking about spiritualism this evening. If you've got any questions about any of the topics that we've spoken about, then please let me know. We've got a little while. Laura says, I love using my dowsing rods and pendulum. Can't wait to use it on Saturday. That is when we hope to go out. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So we have Simon who says, if you watch Darren Bryan's seance program, you can see how Spirit Cabinet works if going on the basis of unconscious fraud. Really interesting. I would be interested to see that for definite, because I don't get me wrong, when I watch things, I watched a show today and it was from the basis of a magician. So I know Darren Bryan isn't a magician, but from a magician that would debunk mediums, and all the way through they'll talk about how spiritualism is a fraudulent thing and it's fake, and it's I know that there is frauds in everything. There is charlatans everywhere you go, but at the same time, as Rene Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. If I believe it exists, it exists in that narrative. It is what I think it is and what I want it to be. And yet that is who you are, and that is what your belief is. And no one should have that right to say that unless someone's hurting someone, or, getting financial gain or destroying, or, that's wrong. But I found that really uncomfortable. But with Darren Brown, I do like his psychology stuff. Sarah, you're muted. Are you muted? I can't hear you.
Yeah, kids.
Okay. And then we have, I will be doing a presentation on Scrying on live, but Facebook Live on Ghost Ed 101, April 28th. All are welcome. Thank you so much. I'll be there. That'd be so good. I'd love to see that. I would love to see that. So that's kind of everything we've done, everything we're doing. Fox's Sisters has a lot. Oh, yeah. Have you seen Jess's Haunted Doll collection on our TikTok and our Facebook?
I love them. They are so clever and they are so informative.
They are, and I love Keep It Spooky, guys.
We put that in our jingle.
So true.
Magic,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I love it. Jess is doing fantastic work on a Haunted Doll episode, and we are hoping to actually start uploading them onto our YouTube soon as well. So they're currently on TikTok, they go onto our Instagram, and they go onto our Facebook. Sometimes we don't do all of them on the other platforms. Some of them are just on TikTok, so it is really good to go over there, have a look. But we will be uploading them onto YouTube soon. So if you haven't got any of those other platforms, then you can still see them here. But to do that, you're going to have to subscribe. So yeah, so make sure you subscribe to YouTube. Check us up on Facebook, which is Equilibrium Paranormal UK. Slightly different name because for some reason we can't change it. So that's on our Facebook page, and then echo.co is our Instagram, ek.co. We have a private Facebook group as well for like after show chats and conversations, and we share things in there as well, so you can keep up to date with everything we're doing in there as well, and some of the information that we share afterwards with guests and stuff. So yeah. Oh, hello, Michael. I love Michael. I'm going to say Michael does the best art. I know I'll keep sidetracking. Michael's photos are phenomenal. I love them. Oh, he is the best. If you can, I don't know whether he's got a Facebook page. If he has, I'm going to share it on our page because his art is phenomenal. And he's also a paranormal researcher as well, so that's how we connect. So hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for the compliment. When we was on David Schrader's channel 2 weeks ago, we were told that
was such a good one.
Yes, if you haven't seen that,
every second of it.
We actually interviewed David Schrader from Holzer Files. He's been in loads of different ghost adventures. The Fright Club with Jack Osborne, like loads, so much. And we interviewed him a few weeks ago. But yeah, they weren't quite sure about our accent there, so it's good to know that an American appreciates it. Thank you, Michael. So thank you for everyone that is joined us. Thank you for listening to us. Well, me ramble. I like to do that. But thank you so much. And next week is going to be Laura and Terry, and they're going to be doing their shows on fairies and mermaids. They're doing a cryptoid season, aren't they? All their shows are cryptid. Jeez, my speech.
Mystical creatures.
Just take me out to the field now. Just take me out to the field.
I'll get me done.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they're doing their cryptozoology. Thanks, Laura. In chat, saving me again, beautiful soul. But they're doing their season, and they're doing their next one is going to be on sirens and fairies. So make sure you join in with them, and then we're going to be back next week, and we're going to be week after that, and we're going to be talking about. I'm pretty sure we're talking about. I
haven't got it in front of me. Not gonna lie.
I think we're not going to aliens. We are going to be talking about aliens soon, aren't we? We're going to be doing a couple of shows on aliens. But our next show, I think, is actually going to be on. I can't remember. I'm sure it's the witch, the lady, Cyril Lake.
Yes,
pretty sure we're going to be talking about. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Cyril Lake, who is an absolutely amazing lady, and she's linked actually with. We're trying to do a little bit of a flow, so she links back to the Holzer Files because she worked with Hans Holzer, and she did trance mediumship, so it links in with this. So that's what we're going to be talking about next. We've had so much fun. Thank you so much for being here.
Can I just add? If you fancy coming on and being interviewed or having a little chat with us, do inbox us or DM us, depending on what social media platform you message us on. Let us know and we'll get back to you. Definitely. We are always looking for new topics and new people to interview. And I promise I won't talk as much as I have tonight. Promise. But thank you. So make
make sure you follow us on our social platforms and make sure that you subscribe to our channel. And please, it will mean the world for us for you to be able to share the love. Send over to your paranormal friends and family. Let them have a listen. And we look forward to seeing you soon at the next live. Or if you wish to message us, and we'll see you then. But thank you. Bye.